Is yours? No. Because that's just how I go. That's how I roll, baby.
But you shouldn't have rolled that way.
Look, I'm not the only person who can do that. Anybody can do that. You can apply for a little loan, for a little grant.
You recognize? You recognize?
Yeah, big old fat guy. He's ugly. He's so ugly, he's ugly.
He is cute, adorable.
He'll let somebody get ready to be baptized. La, 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 la.
You're live.
We are.
Yeah, we're live.
15 seconds. Good, bless. All right, good evening, 7:30. Welcome to our Tuesday night Bible study class. Tonight we're going to continue and finish up looking at Project 2030. I have a couple new images in here. So this was here from last week, but read this carefully. We use this word quite a bit, right, as we were reading each agenda. But look below. Jesuit Worldwide Learning Supports the Sustainable Development Goals. What does that tell you about the Jesuit order?
They're part of the New World Order.
There we go.
The Pope is a Jesuit.
This is actually a pretty good book, Eat the Bugs, by Klaus Schwab. But you just have to read their 17 agenda goals and it sums it up there. All right, we'll go with the Old Testament. Hosea 4:6 states, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I will also reject you." Who can tell me what's Torah? What does Torah mean? Rabbi.
It's the first 5 books of the Bible.
But what's like? Is it instruction? What is it?
It's instruction.
Instruction.
Or how to
Okay.
walk.
How to walk. Okay. There's a proverb that says, "What is it? The beginning. What is it? Fear is the beginning of wisdom." And
Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom,
finish it up for me.
and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding.
Yeah, that's correct. So I think it's important that we, like Rabbi said, we should know our Revelation, the book of Revelation, and the end time, so we can identify where we at. And I think just many people are either not interested or asleep, or like when you have a little baby in the cradle, you have the little thing that goes around and around. They're just looking around and around, and that's what the world does. We're just distracted looking. I think they're called mobiles. We just go while things are passing around us, and then they happen, and we're like, "What happened?" So I'm not saying we should live in fear. The scripture is very clear that we're not supposed to live in any fear, but we should just be aware of the times. I think there were many people, maybe in Jesus' times, who had access to Torah and Messianic properties, prophecies, but were just too busy with the world, with life, and they missed the Holy One that walked among them.
That's just like with the flood. And they were in the days of Noah. There was eating and drinking and celebrating and marriage and giving in marriage and stuff. And it says, "So will it be in the days of the Son of Man."
That's right. That's correct. Yeah, that's true. Matthew 24. Okay. So what are the ways a Christian could reject knowledge? Help me out. Amy, you can't answer this one. Anyone but Amy. And we're not moving forward till I get an answer from someone, so we could be here all night. What are the ways a Christian could reject knowledge?
Not be aware of it.
Not be aware of it,
Not reading the Bible.
Ignore it.
not reading the Bible,
Disbelief.
disbelief,
Not agreeing with God.
not agreeing with God. Okay.
Not doing what the Bible says, only reading it.
Okay. Someone once said there's between the knowledge and heart, there's only 3 feet, but it can be very distant at times. Putting into practice what we read, we can be busy with Sunday football, busy during the sermon, just with sports scores and what's going on, the latest Instagram feeds or stuff like that. How many of you sometimes find yourself wandering while you're reading scripture? I have to be very careful and intentional because I can wander off, so I have to be very intentional.
Yep.
And we read this earlier. So yeah, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Hey, we've been through this before, but does fear mean like fear, like I'm afraid, or fear means reverence, awe, reverence? Okay. Yep.
Excuse me. I think fear means what it says.
both fear, but also awe and reverence, or just awe and reverence, or just fear, like, oh, I'm scared?
Not scared like a scary,
Mhm.
but fear means exactly what he said.
Okay.
You know, he's mentioning that, and I'm remembering when the Israelites are at the mountain and they hear the voice of God, and they're like, no, Moses, you deal with God. We already heard him.
Exodus 19.
And he scared us to death, so you just go ahead, because we'll die if we talk to him. So Moses, you talk to him. And if you die, it's okay with us.
So remember what Jesus in the New Testament says, don't fear the one that can kill the body, but fear the one that can kill both body and soul. So I think that also is, I'm sure if we look at the Greek, it's not like awe, but literally fear, be afraid. So I would say a little of both. I'm not sure how to play. You know, I have to correct myself last week when I talked about this guy, because actually I did it, and the Spirit clearly convicted me. I was doing this really not with good intentions. But this is the mission field. This is someone who's made in the image of God, who got deceived, and ended up like this. And I just want to say I apologize, because I think I was a little bit harsh in the way I described this person. But really, they are the mission field. They are made in the image of God. So any criticism and ridicule of them, we're ridiculing an image bearer of God, despite them being deceived, greatly deceived, and under the influence of the evil one. But they are the mission field. This is the mission field for us. So anyway, yep, he's the mission field everywhere out there. What did Jesus say? The harvest is plenty, but the workers are many. No, workers are few. That's right. Yeah. All right. So last week we really moved along. So now we're going to try to catch up and go from 6 through 17. So we'll just look at some of these agenda goals. Again, this is the future they want, right? This is their plan. And I see this as a Trojan horse. You know, there's a lot of things that sound good on paper, and we're going to get rid of childhood poverty, and we're going to get rid of childhood hunger and whatnot. But no, that's not their intent. That's not really. They could care less. They need a vehicle to implement their agenda. Clean water and sanitation sounds great. I mean, this is good, right? Dirty water, people get sick. They get all kinds of diseases, dysentery. You see big stomachs because of the viruses. This is great. What has Mishkan done in Africa, Rabbi?
Build wells.
Build wells, that's right. The church can do this. We don't need the government. If the churches started putting their money, instead of big fancy buildings and big fancy this and smoke machines and mirrors and holographic images, and if they put that money towards this, it could help a lot of people. Water and sanitation. Oh, okay, tell me, what have they been able to do with these wells? Who has come to get water from those wells?
The local community.
But that includes what? What other people?
Christians, Muslims,
Muslims.
non-believers.
That's right, yeah, everybody. So water and sanitation, I think, or here we go. Sustainable development. Again, this word just shows up ad nauseum here in every description, and it's intentional. Again, I think we looked at what the definition of sustainable was last week. I think I forgot what it was, but anyway, sustainable development and the range of services they provide underpin poverty reduction, economic growth, and environmental sustainability. However, recent decades of exploitation, pollution, and again here's the word climate change, have led to severe water stress in locales across the world. Today, 2.2 billion lack access to safely managed drinking water, and more than 4.2 billion people lack safely managed sanitation. Climate change is exacerbating the situation with increasing disasters such as floods and droughts. Okay, first of all, who brings about floods and droughts? Who's in control of the weather?
God.
Yeah, God. Okay, that's one. And again, these things have been occurring in the past as well. When Jesus gives a parable of building on the sand, what does he say? When the waters rise against the building, the one built on the rock will stand, but that built on the sand will fall. So
They try to say there's more storms and there are more intense storms today than before, but that's not true either.
Yeah, no, think about this. Let's go back 50 years. How much development was there in Montgomery County? Germantown, Poolsville, Urbana. So let's pretend this was Tornado Alley. tornadoes that would have run through that area back then, nothing, because there was no subdivisions. Now we got suburbs growing out all over the place. Of course not. When there's tornadoes, good chance they're going to be hitting communities.
But the storms are not more intense, the earthquakes are not more intense. The earthquakes are increasing, but God
Yeah.
says in the Bible they'll be increasing.
So 80% of wastewater in the world flow back to the ecosystem without being treated or reused, and 70% of the world's natural wetlands extent has been lost, including significant loss of freshwater species. The COVID pandemic poses an additional impediment. I wonder what they mean by that. Impairing access for billions of people to safely manage drinking water. Sanitation and hygiene services definitely needed to prevent the virus from spreading.
That's nonsense.
Yeah, that's nonsense. Now more than ever, the world needs to transform the way it manages its water resources and delivers water and sanitation services for billions of people. Basically, they just want one governing group to determine who gets water, when, and where. Urgent action is needed to overcome this global crisis as it is affecting all countries around the world, socially, economically, and environmentally. Sustainable Development Goal, SDG 6, on water sanitation adopted. Okay. Again, we see a lot of union between the World Economic Forum and the United Nations, so that's another big flag. So
Well,
again,
we worry so much about helping the third world countries getting clean water. And then we turn people, places like beautiful San Francisco into a third world country.
It goes beyond this too, because in all the years you've been alive and all the years you've been voting, they run on the same things every single election cycle. Schools and water and infrastructure and blah, blah, blah. And has anything changed in your lifetime? So we've been voting, at least in my lifetime, for 60 some years now, and nothing's changed. Any government agency, this included, is not going to fix anything, is not going to help anything, and it is not going to make anything better. It's God's people that'll make things better. And if God's people are going to let the government take charge, then God's people are out of order.
yep, we're supposed to be that light on the hill, right? Not the light you don't put underneath the basket. So as direct response to the decade of action and delivery, decade of inaction and delivery for sustainable development called for by the heads of state and government at the SDG Summit in 2019, the UN system launched the SDG 6 Global Acceleration Framework. Who uses, the Global Action Network? Who used that acronym? I think it was Al Sharpton. The Global Action Network, I think.
Yeah, right.
So they always use that word, global.
But nothing has changed in any of these third world countries, and people are still having trouble getting water, and nobody's being served.
So, all right, we'll move on. Again, I believe these are just, they talk.
They sound good, but they don't do anything.
They don't do anything yet. So, I'm gonna read this.
Look, in 1977, they started this action thing. What's changed since 1977? Nothing.
James Brown said it.
Talking loud and saying nothing, Paul.
Yes.
You know Cuba and how the government regime had everybody on the same level? I'm wondering if they're trying to get this sustainable thing.
Well, I think one thing we see with modern governments, usually you have a dictator when you have a socialist regime, system, right? What were the Nazis called? The National Workers Socialist Party. They had one person in charge, right? The dictator. Hitler, Pol Pot in Cambodia, Kim Jong-un, Stalin in Russia, Lenin, Cuba, the Castros, Venezuela, that's one. And Bolivia, you have, I think, who's the, Evo Morales, he was a socialist, got voted out, but he's trying to get back in again, and he's trying to overthrow who's in power.
Let me also say something, because we've been to Cuba twice, okay? And we had unlimited access to Cuba. We could go anywhere. There are very wealthy areas in Cuba where the government and their suck-ups all live, and they've got beautiful restaurants, they've got clean streets, they've got everything. And then you have the rest of Cuba, which has nothing. Even if they have a home, the streets are dirty, they have electricity half the time, but not the rest of the time. So again, while the oligarchs are trying to make this seem like everyone's going to be treated equally, every one of the wealthy will be treated equally, and every one of the rest of us will have nothing. Trust me, it is nothing. In Cuba, you're not even allowed, if you're a farmer, you cannot even kill your own cow to sell for money because cows are too expensive and it brings in too much money. So the government is in charge of every cow in Cuba, no matter what you do. And if you hit one with a car and you accidentally kill it, you will go to jail for years. So again, Cuba had a lot of things that look good on the outside, but there's nothing of substance anywhere. They have, you can get a prescription for anything, but you can't get it filled because they don't have any medicine. Okay? You can literally get a prescription for anything, but they don't have any way to fill it. So what good does the prescription do? And then education is free, so you've got 30,000 doctors on the island, and they don't have anything to practice with. They have no supplies, nothing. So you got all these doctors because the education's free, but then you have no way to earn any money as a doctor. Doctors make as much as someone who sweeps the streets in Cuba. But the oligarchs live in huge mansions with all kinds of amenities and servants, and it's despicable.
Yeah, and again, this goes to Revelation. There's a chapter there where it says, during the tribulation period, a day's work for a loaf of bread, but don't touch the oil and wine. That's based, many interpret that as, okay, the poor people will be working very hard for a loaf of bread.
Yep.
But the rich will be enjoying wine and oil, olive oil, and with their bread and their lamb.
But I mean, we see this even depicted in even the movies. When you look at Soylent Green, the very wealthy had everything, and the poor had absolutely nothing. So again, this is what they're planning for the entire world, and it has nothing to do with all of us being equal. It has to do with them having control of everything.
That's right. It's about control. Yep.
It's about control.
All right, we're moving along. Affordable and clean energy. Okay. Has the energy been affordable since we went to this cleaner energy in the last 4 years?
Nope.
Have your bills gone? Raise your hand if your utility bills have gone down. Nobody.
If
Right.
they double, yeah.
Yeah, okay, has it doubled? Yeah, that's right. Okay. In 2015, the UN General Assembly adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which included a dedicated standalone goal on energy, SDG 7, calling to ensure access to affordable, reliable, and sustainable and modern energy for all. Energy lies at the heart of both the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Agreement on Climate Change. Achieving SDG 7 will open a new world of opportunities for millions of people through the new economic opportunities. Let's stop their jobs. Remember the big push for EV vehicles back in 2021 from the current administration? What happened to all those plans to start pushing the Ford F-150 Lightning and the Ford Mach-E, and Hertz started just buying all electric vehicles? Yeah.
Nobody wants them, and all the car rental places that bought electric vehicles are trying to offload these
Especially
electric
Hertz, big
because
time.
nobody wants to rent an electric vehicle either.
Yeah, and again, so I think the president of Hertz or the CEO said, okay, we're going to go all electric by 2025. I think he was virtue signaling. He just wanted to be good with the administration, but in the end, now they're selling them because they're a headache. They're an absolute headache maintenance for them.
And how many of you guys own rechargeable own items with rechargeable batteries?
Don't you take my vacuum away?
And how long does that rechargeable battery last? And every time you charge it, it lasts less and less. So Arnold just brought me a flashlight that's rechargeable, and every time I charge it, it lasts about 5 minutes, and now it won't even work. So and on top of that, when you have to get the lithium and all this other crap out of the ground, it is strip mining. First off, they're sending young children into these mines to do this stuff and to retrieve these cobalts and these lithiums and all this other stuff. You can find it all over the web. These poor kids in Africa being forced into these mines to get stuff, and the rich people taking all their efforts and not giving the kids even a decent salary. And then you will see that when you drill oil, it does nothing to the environment. It literally, you can have all kinds of beautiful trees and everything around the oil wells, and there's no problem. Because it's like remember when they took all the wires off the wire telephone poles and put them underground? How much nicer it was. Your electricity didn't stop every time there was a storm and everything. It doesn't, and it's more aesthetically pleasing. Same thing with oil.
Yeah, in West Texas and Oklahoma, there are most oil wells are on ranch land,
Yep.
and so cattle are grazing around them.
Right, Texas.
And all those big windmills. First off, the windmills are apparently killing a lot of birds, and they're killing a lot of sea wildlife like whales and dolphins and stuff because of the noise. apparently noise is amplified underwater, which I think we all understand, and that vibrating and all that noise is causing these whales and these dolphins and orcas and everything to beach themselves and to get sick.
Massachusetts, that's become quite common now. They're trying to, they're trying to say, oh, it's something else, but clearly they put the windmills, offshore windmills, and now they're seeing beach whales.
Yep, and
Come
thousands
through.
and thousands of
Yeah.
dead birds everywhere being hit by these
Yeah.
windmills as they're flying through them.
And it's a slow migrating bird, so you can imagine small little sparrows they have a small footprint, but the smaller egrets or the storks or the pelicans that just kind of glide, they're the ones that kind of take a longer time to go through that, so they're the ones that usually get hit. Eagles, anything that's big and just kind of floats around.
And all these fields and fields and fields of solar panels are actually heating up the earth and causing climate change, as opposed to providing enough energy for anything.
And that's because, what color are they? They're dark in color, so dark attracts heat. And again, they're not that efficient. So if they were 100% efficient, they could change that heat into electricity. But I think it's like 95 to 98% only is little 2% made to electricity. So all that becomes heat on the panel. And it's a dark panel, so it's absorbing heat.
And it kills all the vegetation around it.
Yeah, it's not very good.
It's not good at all.
So I wanted to see if someone can help me out here because I'm a little blockheaded. Tell me what's the connection between affordable and clean energy, and I'm just curious, what's this? Empowering women, children, and youth.
And
And
to go
better-
mine their lithium for them, that's how they're empowering women, children,
I'm
and
just
youth.
trying to make the connection. How does clean energy and affordable connect to better education and health? But anyway, more sustainable, equitable. Here's the word
And
equitable.
inclusive.
What's equitable mean? That means that they take money from you and distribute it to others. Take your resources, distribute it to others. And inclusive communities. You'll see why they use this word pretty soon. And greater protections from and resilience to climate change. Okay. The global roadmap for accelerated SDG 7 action resulting from the high-level dialogue on Energy 2020 provides a guide for collective action on energy across sectors. DISA supports these efforts. I'm not sure what DISA stands for. DISA supports these efforts by providing secretariat services for intergovernmental discussions on energy by conducting and facilitating relevant policy analysis and engaging in the required capacity building. All right, we'll move on.
These descriptions say a whole lot of nothing, really.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's right.
They sound good. It's all virtue signaling.
Yeah.
It all sounds like it's going to be something impressive, but then it's just crap.
All right, so just talk about weather. So someone's saying, but maybe we're having more heat and we'll have less food. What does the Lord say after Noah landed on Ararat, mountains of Ararat, and what did the Lord say? Never again will I curse the ground because of humans, even though every inclination of the human heart is
Evil.
Oh, what was it like before the flood?
Evil.
Yeah.
What is it like after the flood?
Evil. From childhood, okay, from a young age. And never again will I destroy all living creatures as I've done. As long as the earth endures, what's it say?
Seed times and harvests.
So we'll have access to
planting and harvest.
Yep. Summer and winter, day and night will never cease. That's until we get the new heaven and the new earth.
Yep.
All right, 2015, the UN General Assembly adopted okay, actually, let's go back to this. There probably has been some kind of climate change. If you think after the flood, definitely there were glaciers that went as far south as Minnesota and a little further around the world, and they're gone. You can imagine the world, there was the change in temperature, but again, this is
The world in general goes through cycles.
And what's the biggest driver of these cycles? Yeah, what did you say? I think you said storms, sun storms. You were correct if that's what you said, solar storms. That's what you said, right, Steve?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. And Greta Thunberg, yeah, she's, anyway. Again, she is the mission filled. She is the mission. You have to remember, she's just deceived. Okay, I digress. So 2015, the UN General Assembly adopted the 2030 Agenda. We need to find another word for sustainable. Let's call it, what? No, we can't say that. No. No, come on. Help me find a word. Let's make this a little
No,
bit.
let's leave it sustainable, because they're gonna be using it.
Flavorful? Did you say
No,
flavorful?
leave it
Oh.
sustainable.
Leave it.
Oh, leave it? Okay, all right.
Because that's what
Agenda
they're
for
gonna
Leave
use.
It Development, which include a dedicated and standalone goal on energy SDG 7, calling to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all.
He's just tired of saying it.
Energy lies at the heart of both the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable. Before I read, what happened 3 years ago in the winter of 2021 in Texas? Remember they have
They had
a
an
lot
ice
of
storm.
solar. They have a lot of solar panels, and
And they couldn't keep up with the
they couldn't
requirement.
keep up.
for
I have a friend that lives in the suburbs of Dallas, and it was miserable.
California can't let you plug in your electric cars all the time because they
Brownouts.
don't have the ground.
Yep.
Yeah.
Their grid is dead.
He was miserable. Their house got as low as 40 degrees, and they were just panicking that he doesn't have a fireplace, that their pipes would burst.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was an unpleasant time for them. And then finally, electricity would come on for a couple hours, and they trying to run up the heat. The house would get to 55, and then whoop, drop back down to around 40. That's very close to freezing. They were miserable. They don't have gas stoves. If they had gas stoves, they could have just used a little lighter and just boiled water all day long to heat up the house with steam and add heat in there. But that's why they're pushing to get rid of gas stoves. It's control again. I don't know if you remember when we watched some of those videos in AI, we saw what goes on in China. Some people love being under control. They love being told what to do, their social credit score, being watched, being monitored. There's some people that are
It
just,
depends on if they're used to. Just
Yeah.
like when the waffles went down, when the Berlin waffles went down, the people that came out from the east, they didn't wanna make any decisions.
they don't want to make decisions.
What did we do
Interesting.
about this? But
Yeah, you're
because
told what
they
to
never
do.
learned to make decisions.
Okay, yeah. All right, so we get to opportunities and jobs empower women, children, youth. I thought I read this before. Help more sustainable, equitable, and inclusive communities and greater protection. Didn't I just read this? I thought I read this.
No, it's the same for all of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
just copy.
And then you got Greta, right? How dare you? Look, she's reading from the script. Okay, how dare you? Probably in bold, dark bold, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't even be here right now.
Again, let's look at these. So again, we're seeing this equitable, inclusive, these words, justice. Notice how they put them all together. So if you're against racial justice, you're actually against social. They're trying to make these all into one justice. Climate justice is racial justice. You see them, those people say that all the time in these protests.
The president of Greenpeace, though, just came out and said climate change is a bunch of hooey.
Yeah, just like one of the co-founders of the Weather Channel, also this is all a bunch of baloney, said about the heating weather. There's a good book by Mark Morano, it's by the Politically Correct something books. Great, just read the first chapter and you're like, wow, he says how the UN, the scientists, climate scientists, they're saying in their own words, we just report what we're being told what to report
Right.
from the above.
No blame power.
And actually, the hottest year on record was actually 1934, but they changed that like back in late 90s or early 2000s, so that it would be the modern time. So 1934 by far was the hotter weather. And then you have to also incorporate a lot of things. Where are these weather stations? Weather station heat is affected by city heat sinks. So if you have a weather station in downtown Manhattan and the peak of summer and downtown, Chicago, those are heat sinks. They absorb all the heat and they get very hot, but you go out into the countryside, like just in DC, if you're ever in DC, like I used to live in DC, when I drove from the military, from the one side across Rock Creek Park, there was a huge difference. You could feel the change in temperature from the neighborhood going through driving through Rock. It was at least 5 degrees. It was a nice, cool.
Yeah, DC, I think on average, is like, 3 or 4 degrees warmer than here.
Yeah, that's right.
The more concrete, the more warm.
Oh, okay, so what I was trying to say is depends, again, I don't know where these weather stations, I remember reading articles, I think on Epic Times saying, some of these weather stations that record weather don't exist. They're making some of these numbers up. So again, remember the word deception, right? We see that a lot in the New Testament, deception in the end times. So I believe that's what they're doing, they're manipulating the numbers. So again, just remember, they're trying to create all these into one thing: climate, gender, social, racial justice. You know, these are today's students. This is in the 50s. Big difference.
It is a big difference.
All right, wood industry activity strongly correlated with whale deaths. This is where we're talking about the turbines. An investigation of large whale mortality and offshore wind development activity in the U.S. since 2015. So of course you're going to have your fact checkers say no, this is not right. But look, the numbers are there. It says they started putting in these windmill farms, and they wanted to put tens of thousands, I think, of windmill farms off the coast of Ocean City, and the city council's like, no way, because it's an eyesore. WTOP showed a picture of what it's going to look like. It's ugly. I mean, forget it. They're going to lose money. People are going to go elsewhere. But again, we have a socialist, I call him Obama 2.0, as governor of the state. Where do you think, what kind of cars do you think these are?
Electric.
Yeah, electric. Where?
China.
Yeah, China. They got thousands upon thousands upon thousands of it. They just don't last. And they're too expensive to run. What happened was the government was subsidizing the purchase of these and really pushing people to buy them. But once the subsidies ended, they saw that these were, really not that good, and they just gave them up. Also, I believe China, at least up to a year or two ago, was building quite frequently coal power plants to, to electrify these charge stations. So, go figure. Again, we were talking about this back in 2020. It was all over going electric. Everyone was happy. Gas prices was going up, and Pete Buttigieg was saying, "Okay, because gas prices are so high, you should buy an electric car." That's brilliant. Okay, so now what's happening? Ford to lay off 4,000 workers. Europe scales back EV. So we're seeing that it's it's a different story in Europe because they're being mandated. They have no choice. Here we still have. Consumers can make the choice, still have to say, and there's no demand. I have a friend from Czech, and she's telling me, Paul, and my friends in Germany and other nearby countries saying, look, they're sick of this whole EV mandate because they're being forced to buy EVs, and they're not as reliable as their diesel or gas counterparts. Here we're talking about, back in 2021, I believe, the CEO or the president of Hertz said, okay, we're going to go all electric by 2025. That's just 30 days from now. And now they're trying to unload most of their EV vehicles.
If you want an EV and you want to get it for a good price, go to Hertz and go to the Hertz car sales. Every rental place sells their cars after a while. But yeah, you'll find out how horrible they are, but you'll have one.
Yeah, so Elon Musk, he made this comment, it's sort of paraphrasing. He said, electric cars are like novelty items. They're not meant to save the environment. They're just a different car you have. Like my friend in Dallas, the suburbs of Dallas, told me his wife's boss, they had to drive them to the airport. He said he had some Honda new electric. He said it was a lot of fun to drive, quiet, smooth. But again, you're going to pay much higher insurance. They're a lot heavier because a third of the weight of the EV comes from the battery. That means you have to get special wheels. You just can't get any old cheap wheels. You have to get, if you look carefully, they're bigger, fatter, because they have to sustain a lot more weight. Also, if they started forcing everyone to go into EV vehicles, all these apartment buildings or condo buildings that have the parking lots adjacent next to them, they would have to refit them because of the additional weight caused by this. On top of that, if these were to catch on fire, you saw a couple of years ago they were catching on fire. You cannot stop this water. You can douse it. Nothing. You can.
The water actually makes the flames bigger.
Yeah, it's a lot of stored energy in there. So when that thing goes on fire, it's unstoppable and it's pretty disastrous.
I don't ever park again next to an EV station or EV charging station or something in the garage.
And the batteries only last about 8 to 10 years, and then a new battery for those things are like $20,000.
That's correct. So again, I don't want to belabor EVs too long, but they say, okay, this car has 300-mile range. That's in ideal conditions. That's city driving. You're not using radio lights. You're driving at an outside temperature of 72 or 76 degrees. But if you're driving in the wintertime and you put on the heater, or summertime you're using the AC or playing radio, that drops significantly the range, significantly.
And
So
what happened 2 years ago when 95 was stuck and people were stuck on 95 in the wintertime?
when there
all
was a bad
night long.
accident, they were stuck on there all night from the
And
snowstorm.
they were running, the electric
Yeah,
cars
they
were
can't-
running out,
yeah,
yeah.
you
The
can't do
electric
that.
cars all ran out.
And then you saw in Chicago what happened, they couldn't charge, it was so cold that they just couldn't, so there were all these cars at the electric. Again, buyer beware, just do your homework. Why are you supposed to lead are pushing EVs on the public?
Control.
Control.
Yeah, really, that's what it is, control. Control, 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 and I think China is making a lot of money off lithium batteries. I think they own a lot of the lands where there's the lithium mines. So a couple,
They're all over Africa where all the lithium mines are, and they pay a good price to the African oligarchs so that they can take the lithium and the cobalt and stuff like that they need for the batteries.
I think the same issue is occurring in Chile and in Bolivia. I know Chile because Minnie was telling me there's some big lithium mines there, and I thought she said China owns them. So article came out. They found in I think Indian reservation land just hundreds of thousands of square miles of lithium mines there. I said to myself, they are not going. They said they could supply the world's batteries for 10 years, but I said there is no way they're going to mine that because they're going to see that they require heavy machinery that spill out a lot of smoke, diesel smoke. They destroy the land. So I said that's not going to fly. Nothing. It's there, but they're
And
not.
they don't want the American Indians to have an actual economy and to run it
Okay,
because
yeah.
they actually closed their uranium mines too.
Okay. And again, control, control, control. With an EV, they can do this. They can remotely disable your car and take control and do whatever you want. Right now, with the cars we have, I think it might not be as easy. But
$26,000 battery. You see that? They locked him out of his car because he had the battery replaced in his car and he didn't pay for it.
for that price, you can get a Chevy Bolt, used one. All right, decent work and economic growth. Sustainable development has been overarching goal of international community since the UN Conference on Environment and Development in 1992. So this has been going on for a while. Amongst numerous commitments, the conference called upon governments to develop national strategies for sustainable development, incorporating policy measures outlined in the Rio Declaration and Agenda 21. Despite the efforts of many governments around the world to implement such strategies, as well as international cooperation to support national governments, there are continuing concerns over global economic and environmental developments in many countries. These have been intensified by recent prolonged global energy, food, and financial crises. Okay, food crises. If you ever fly across the United States, you're going to see there's more land than there are cities. A lot of land to farm. And underscored by continued warnings from global scientists that society is transgressing a number of planetary boundaries of ecological limits. Okay, big words. With governments, they seeking effective ways to lead their nations out of these related crises will also take into account these planetary boundaries. Green economy. Remember what was the Green New Deal they came up with a couple of years ago? How they were going to refit part of the green economy. I think Green New Deal was people wouldn't have to work anymore. They would just pay you a living wage. When God created Adam and Eve, did he tell them just to do nothing? What was his commandment to do?
Work in the garden.
Work in the garden. Well, why should they? Because I believe in heaven we're also going to be working. We're not just going to be idly, as the pastors say, sitting on pews listening to a sermon all day. No, we'll be busy. We'll be busy serving the King, but we'll be busy. With governments, they seeking effective ways to lead their nations out of these related crises, while taking into account these plain boundaries. I think I already read that. The concept has received significant international attention over the past few years as a tool to address the 2008 financial crises, as well as one. We could look at what happened in 2008. Why was it a financial crisis? What were they doing with mortgages? They were just handing them out like, woo.
Giving them to people that didn't qualify.
Yep, just.
And then being
Turn them in.
surprised when they defaulted.
Yep. Okay, so do you think that was intentional or
Yes.
that was by accident?
It was intentional
Yes.
because they were mandated to give the mortgages to people that didn't qualify.
Yeah, okay. This has resulted in the rapidly expanding literature, including new publications on green economy from a variety of influential international organizations such as Greenpeace, national governments, think tanks, experts, and non-governmental organizations, and others. Okay.
I feel bad because it's not history; it was actually just life for us.
Yeah.
Where are we?
We lived through the history.
Yeah, we're gonna again, as Walter said, this is just a bunch of big words with
Little meeting.
little meaning. There we go.
Same thing.
Oh, okay, yeah, let's look here. So there's a reason I put this in here. We were looking at that word inclusive. Where was this in here somewhere? Someone help me find it. I don't want to read the whole thing. Sustainable, alleviate concerns regarding effective integration of green national
It's in the
health
last line.
and sustainable development SDG goals.
Yeah.
Oh, inclusive economy. There we go. Yeah, look at this. So inclusive communities. I think somewhere it says about inclusive communities. So it sounds good, but then you read this. Where we live matters. Oh, look at those play of words. What does it sound like? Live matters. Where we live matters. Sounds very familiar to a slogan from about 10 years ago. Our address determines whether we have easy access to fresh food, clean air, and recreational facilities. It determines whether our children will have access to quality education, public education. And there is also compelling research that suggests our zip code is the single most significant predictor of our life expectancy. Sure, where we live influence our ability to realize the American dream. Since 2005, ICP, that's Inclusive Communities Project, has helped low-income families achieve economic success by addressing the barriers to affordable housing in high opportunity areas that offer a clear path to good schools, safe neighborhoods, gainful employment, and healthy living environments. ICP provides direct services to families with Section 8 housing, choice vouchers, and supports this effort through housing. So,
Section 8 housing is not equal housing.
No.
Section 8 housing is welfare housing.
yeah, and from what I've seen, when you give somebody money to live somewhere, they don't take care of it.
No.
This is my neighborhood. There's two places now. Actually, one home by a friend of mine, a couple blocks away. They got bought out by. She said very nice, wealthy Chinese came in their Mercedes-Benz, very well dressed. They bought out these homes. They got these cheap contractors to add extra rooms. There was a 2-story, and now they brought in Section 8 housing. And she says it's bad. You know, loud music, you know, pot smoking, and what's a quiet, you know, neighborhood is. It's become. They're a little bit scared of the people there because they're there. You know, they're. I don't know how to say it nicely. So I won't say it all. They're causing trouble. Let's put it that way. Causing trouble.
Well, I mean, we have 2 houses in this development that are Section 8, and they don't follow the rules the way everyone else does.
Yeah.
They throw their trash in the yard. They got everything they ever owned in the side of the yard. They don't cut the grass. They do have loud parties and all kinds of stuff happening. So it's incongruent to the community standard.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know if you ever noticed, when you give somebody something, they don't take care of it, but when it's their own, they purchased it, you know, they take better care of it. Yep.
But also this thing about opportunity, they keep talking about opportunity. Yeah, everybody's got an opportunity in this country. We all have the same opportunity, and there's plenty of success stories of people who came out of, just from their example, Section 8 housing, and like Ben Carson. I mean, there's people that have made it. Dr. Swain. Lots of people have made it in this country because we have equal opportunity. You don't always get equal outcome, but you get equal opportunity if you're willing to work for it.
Isn't there a difference though in projects and Section 8? Because Section 8 people can live anywhere. Projects are transitional housing.
And they're supposed to be transitional, but they end up being permanent.
I
That's
know,
the problem.
well, that's what happened. People
Right.
started staying there, but they were originally designed to be transitional for
But the
people
people
to be low
in the
income.
projects can get Section 8 housing. So they could get out of the projects. But the problem is, again, and it, you know, being a DC cop for 30 years, I saw it. They have a mentality that keeps them there.
I know.
And it's sad. It really is sad. But it's because they're not given the opportunity to get better education. Everything goes back to education. But the public schools are no longer educating, they're indoctrinating. So there's a big difference. You don't have the opportunities that our children should have because they're not being taught things that are important in life.
Yeah, so for the owners of these housing that they're using for Section 8, for example, there's an incentive because they're guaranteed income from the government. So if the people there default, which I've heard from one owner, no, they still getting money from the government. So if they're getting money now from Section 8, now they're getting, you know, a little more money. So
I literally worked in that office, and what they did not have was accountability because we got a new account manager, and he came in and said this when I started working there. He was like, who takes care of because they give you your security deposit and everything. There was no accountability, so when these people are moving out, there was nobody going back and getting the security deposit. They have all this criteria that they have for how these houses are supposed to be set up and what should be in them and what these Section 8 people should have. But as Rabbi said, then you have these people going in with this mindset, they don't have any value to what they have because it's been handed to them, like you were explaining. And so, but there's no accountability or follow-up.
And this
with
is the
the
problem
money.
with a lot of government agencies, because we have somebody who actually works in housing, in this Section 8 housing, and they do the background checks on people. And he says a lot of these people will have businesses that are making $1 million a year, but they're being paid their Section 8 housing is being paid in a nice community like this.
Exactly.
And they've got a Mercedes-Benz SUV, and they've got thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in bank accounts, and they're flying back and forth to their home countries and everything all the time. And yet you, taxpayer of Maryland, are paying their Section 8 housing fee. And when I told him, I said, well, why don't you take it to your supervisors and complain? He says, because then we're told we're all racist, and we can't do that anymore.
Which leads to this question here. How should we respond to initiatives like promotion of fair housing or inclusive housing? As the body of believers.
I think you should all open your homes and take in everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Next, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Inclusive and sustainable industrial development has been incorporated together with resilient infrastructure and innovation as Sustainable Development Goal 9 in the 2030 agenda. Okay, remember how much money did we set as earmark for infrastructure a couple of years ago? How many trillions? What have we seen?
Nothing.
Nothing. So where do you think that money went? Let's not go there. Okay.
We know
Both,
where it went.
both 2030, Ukraine. Both 2030 agenda, the Addis Ababa action agenda focus on the relevance of inclusive and sustainable industrial development as a basis for, wow, they just love that word sustainable, economic growth.
They don't tell you how it's sustainable. That's the thing.
It's just a
Yeah, they
buzzword.
just throw the little buzzword in there,
Yeah.
but it doesn't tell you anything about how any of this that we've looked at is sustainable.
So we'll jump to paragraph 2 of the Lima Declaration, because that's where I was born. That tells you that what Peru is selling out to the WF. Industrialization is a driver of development. Industry increases productivity, job creation, and generates income, thereby contributing to poverty eradication and addressing other development goals, as well as providing opportunities for social inclusion. What? Including gender equality, empowering women and girls, and creating decent employment for the youth. As industry develops, it drives an increase of value addition and enhances the application of science, technology, and innovation, therefore encouraging greater investment in skills and education, and thus providing the resource to meet broader, inclusive, and sustainable development objectives.
You know what that really means? It means we will have you all in slave labor.
There we
That's
go.
exactly what that paragraph
Yeah.
means. It's sustainable because we always will have more slaves.
Yep, so thank you. Then we can summarize that way, I can move on. Because we still have 50 slides to go through. The role of transport in it, okay. I think we get the gist here. They're like Walter said, they're big words, means nothing. Virtue signal. Reduced inequalities. Stating the MDG report. What's MDG? Stand for acronym. MDG.
Is it Millennium
Millennium.
Development?
There we go. That was it. Thank you, Melinda. Yes, right there. Okay,
Right
good.
there. Yeah.
All right, see, you read ahead. You cheated. Africa made great strides for the 8 Millennium Development Goals in many areas, especially related to health and education and advanced. Registered by Sub-Saharan Africa, it was the fastest among all developing regions. Okay, we won't go there. Nevertheless, many goals and targets have yet to be achieved, in spite of the fact that child mortality rate in Sub-Saharan Africa declined 5 times faster during 2005 to 2013 than it was in 1990, 1995. The region still detains the highest rate. Furthermore, 70% of its population still suffers from lack of access to improved sanitation facility. 41% of inhabitants still live in 2015 with less than $1.25 a day out of the 7 million global out-of-school children primary age. In 2015, 32 million are in the Sub-Saharan Africa. In the past 2 decades, North Africa has not registered any improvements in women's access. Okay. So we'll go on.
again, there's a lot of people in Africa that are dying still from AIDS and from malaria and from other diseases that are completely controllable,
Yeah.
except for the governments take the money that we give
Yeah.
them as Americans and use it for their own personal banking accounts, and so the resources never get to the people. Or as when we were in Africa, we saw like these tractors that were just sitting there rotting.
Yeah.
And when we asked about it, they said, well, they gave them to us, but nobody knows how to run them, so they just sit there and rot. So their sustainable fuel and aid and everything else is just being wasted. So our tax dollars are being wasted by the millions and billions because no one knows how to do it. Kathy had something to say.
Kathy?
Everything you're talking about here, I lived this for 20 years. I captioned for the United Nations.
Okay.
So I was actually one of the captioners that were dealing with SDGs, and I can tell you every sentence that appears took about 2 years to write. And it took about 150 or 200 people in the room arguing about what it should say, and
How many times can you use the word sustainable?
I mean,
They probably took shots every time they said the word sustainable.
it drove me nuts, and finally I had to,
It's like a
also because it was 4 o'clock in the morning my time, or sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning my time, I decided I can't take that anymore. I can't, it just, they don't ever seem to really make progress, and it's getting worse as far as from the beginning to now, the anti-Americanism.
Yep.
And
All they want from America is our money.
and when the leaders are when there are more of the people that are in the leadership that are the Muslim variety, they really do flavor it with their beliefs, even though they say that they're being non-biased and everything. So just realize that every sentence you read took about 2 years for them to agree on the language.
And Kathy, I
And
suspect.
you got paid very well to be that dumb.
The leaders of each country that were on these committees, they'd fly there and they'd stay in
Five-star hotels.
yeah.
And Kathy, I suspect there's a spiritual component too, that just your spirit could tell this was a really nefarious,
That's right.
demonic nature-driven agenda. There was that struggle. I suspect there's also the spiritual side to what was going on with your struggle here.
It drove me nuts. I just couldn't take it anymore.
If it took them that long to get some of the verbiage down, I can't imagine how they get anything really done.
They don't.
Yes.
Because you look, a lot of this stuff's been going on since 92, 2005, and nothing's changed.
Right.
Nothing's changed.
Right.
All right, this one's fun. Sustainable cities and communities. So, okay, so you don't have to go to the park anymore. You don't need a backyard because trees will grow in your balcony there. So, making cities, okay, human settlements inclusive. They're going to go inclusive. They are safe, resilient, and sustainable. All right, what are we looking at? Yeah. I'm nauseous already reading this stuff. Make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, sustainable.
We see how that works in the projects.
Disaster risk reduction is an integral part of social and economic development and is essential if development is to be sustainable for the future. This has been recognized by several global documents on DRR and sustainable development, Yokohama Strategy and Plan of Action for a Safer World, 1994, as the first major international framework for disaster risk reduction, recognizing interrelation between sustainable development and DRR. Okay, you get the idea. The UN
Doesn't
Commission.
Yokohama make tires?
Yeah.
And you don't have to go to the park, so you don't have to interact with other people. You're just kind of in your little cocoon. And we've all seen how much damage was done with COVID by people living in a little tiny
And how they locked them in their little cocoons
Yes.
too and wouldn't let them out of their little cocoons
That's
and
right.
didn't send in food and water or anything.
I don't know if you've seen those videos out of China, what they were doing there. People were going crazy. They were yelling out of their buildings because they'd be stuck there for days and days at a time, not being able to. And if you didn't know, you pet lovers, you better cover your ears. So if, let's say, someone in your house had COVID, they would pull you out to quarantine stations away from your building or your housing. So they needed a snitch line to figure out who had COVID. And if you had a pet, what do you think they did?
They killed
They
your
show
dad.
them, the Chinese officials grabbing with batons, little beagle, they're killing him. While the people are crying as they're putting him in the van to ship him off to be quarantined from COVID, while they were in their own apartment complex.
And
So-
other apartment complexes, they literally had security at the doors. The door to the complex, you might have a 25 floor apartment building, and they had closed and locked it with a metal door on the front. You couldn't get out if you wanted to, and if there was a fire, you weren't getting out.
They snuck out a video of a warehouse where they brought in fresh vegetables and food for the people that were stuck in these big cities. Beautiful, fresh-looking food that they were just letting go to rot.
Yep.
Just big warehouses with all these produce. Yeah, they're evil. And that's why I say I believe China is the proving ground, the testing ground, the test environment for the New World Order. So whatever you see is going on in China, that's kind of where they're kind of working on, okay, how do we refine this for the future implementation, for the Great Reset. I am 99.9 convinced that China is the test ground for that. Big cities and humans, okay. You get the idea. Let's go to, here, listen to this. Okay. Listen carefully about these cities, these little cities here.
For the 20th, I hope I will have the pleasure still to be invited for the meeting when we meet for the 20th Governance Summit. You will use the app like Uber.
Uber.
But not anymore to call some driver.
Listen carefully.
But automatically guided car, a self-driven car,
San Francisco.
will come to your hotel or wherever you are and will bring you to the airport. No, Los Angeles is one of the cities with the heaviest traffic, who told me in 2030 Los Angeles will be private car driven free. And this will allow
Did you hear
to
that? Private
transform
car, that means you
highways
own your own car.
into parks and other public spheres.
So think about that. Highways to parks, and how are people going to get to work? So they're probably thinking of these 15-minute cities, which I think we'll get to pretty soon. Because if they're going to turn thousands and thousands of miles in the LA area to parks, then people that had jobs, let's say they live in Orange County, but they worked in downtown LA, they won't be working in downtown LA anymore because they need the freeways to get there. But if those freeways are now parks, I suspect they're expecting them to work from home or locally.
But you ain't getting to work anyhow. I've been in that traffic so many times.
You get to work, you just have to set aside 4 hours a day each way for your commute. Anyways, so, what's that? Did I mess this up? I did mess it up. All right, what's a 15-minute city? Let's listen to this.
Is a 15-minute city, and why are conspiracy theorists jumping on it? You may have seen this, a vision of what the future of the world's big cities might look like, but some on TikTok aren't happy.
You won't be able to do that.
Spoiler, they've got nothing to worry about. 15-minute cities are basically where bigger cities are divided up into smaller sections or neighbourhoods. This man came up with the idea. It means everything people need, like shops, gyms and bars, are all within a 15-minute walk or cycle. With town planners making places better to live in, they'll reduce carbon emissions with fewer people needing to use their cars, in turn improving people's health. Parts of London, as well as Paris and Cleveland in the US, are looking at adopting them, while Melbourne and Copenhagen have both started something similar. But conspiracy theorists are saying this is a government's plot to put us all back into lockdown. That's not true. Oxfordshire County Council recently received abuse for their plan and had to issue this statement after some, including Katie Hopkins, said things like this.
You will only have 15 minutes of freedom. This is real.
We know that's not the case. There are some legitimate criticisms, though, about whether getting rid of cars would really work and whether people might mix less with those living elsewhere. But if it's better for the planet and makes life more convenient, could people get on board with a 15-minute city?
Only after the rapture. Big cities and human hubs inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable All right, so.
Notice what he said though, if it's better for the planet
How it finishes then.
and your health, then you should just do it. So it doesn't matter if your mother lives in Florida and you live up here, you can't go visit your mother in Florida because it's not good for the planet. It's not good for the climate. It's not good for your health. It's not good for the world. So you have to just give up your rights. All of this is about us giving up our rights to the control of the governments. We're already seeing it all over Montgomery County. Montgomery County is one of the worst places for this stuff.
Well, remember COVID, they would have let you, for example, I couldn't go to Delaware because they had police outside the main city there, and you had to show that you were a resident of Delaware to get into downtown Lewis.
Yeah.
So for about 2 months, 2.5, 3 months, I couldn't go there because of that. And I shared this before. I think it was early April with my mom, who got tired of just being stuck at home for like 3 weeks since they started locking.
That happened in the Outer Banks also.
Did
It happened in New York. New York wouldn't let anybody without New York tags in the state. I mean, again, all this is just about control. And I'm sorry, but it's the left that is doing it.
So we decided to take a drive across the Bay Bridge into the Eastern Shore just to go shopping. And I tell you, it's a totally different world. People were just like nothing there. There was food was there, everyone was calm, no panicking. I remember seeing people masking up in the market out there by Denton. But a couple days later, I got a notification from Google. Did you intend to drive this far out your zone to, Denton, Maryland? I was like, wow, first time I ever got a notification. And some semi-threatening notification from Google saying, did you intend to drive all the way out there? That's none of your business.
But that's what they're asking. What was your zone? How do they know what zone
Yeah,
you're
so
supposed to be
of
in?
course the GP, your phone has, they're tracking. But again,
What's the zone, your zip code, your state, what's the zone?
I got a tracker.
oh, they have trackers, yeah.
He went more than 15 minutes away from his house.
Yeah, from Rockville, I went all the way to Denton. Beautiful, it was well
I
worth
think
it.
the question they're asking is, do you know personally where your zone is actually? Or is it based on your zip code or location? That's the question.
Does Google have your home address and that's what they're using for your zone?
Look, I am the most anti-technology person there is. I wouldn't even know where to put that in.
Yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, so I think it's just,
Google knows where your phone is. And
Oh, I'm
they know
sure.
where your phone is at night, so they know
yeah,
where
there we go. Yeah.
Whether you cut it off or not.
So they ping the signal, right? They can, your signal from your phone is being pinged all the time to the transmission tower, so they knew where it was. All right, so responsible consumption and production, chemical and waste. All right, we know about chemicals, lack of sufficient scientific information for the risk. Again, I think well, it's a lot of big words, but there's still, as long as they're making money, they're pumping this stuff into the ground and wastewater.
What were the six? What are the it says the 19 contains 16 programs. What's that in the middle?
Expanding and accelerating international assessment of chemical risks. Just for example, lithium mining. That's also very poisonous. Injecting water into the ground, leaching chemical. They don't care less. They could care less. Harmonization of classification and labeling of chemicals. All right. This is just again. This is one of their goals to get rid of chemicals. Hence why, as we're going to see in a further slide, it was Sri Lanka. I think that in 2021 said, okay, we're getting rid of chemical fertilizers. And that was a huge mistake.
Same with Montgomery County.
Yeah, so here's one with Montgomery County that I think they need to get the landscape folks together and go to the council and say, look, because they're banning gas power July 20th, gas power leaf blowers. I observe most of them have big, they're expensive. To trade those in and only get $500 for a battery powered one, I think it's going to put a lot of those folks out of business. So I would love to see a movement where they all get together, wink wink, and get together, band together, and go to city council, Montgomery County.
With our leaf blowers.
Well, there we go.
Blow it
Yes.
right up there.
Yep, and blow it all day long. Yep, that's a great idea. Google, you didn't hear that, or Facebook, you didn't hear this. So, if they stay quiet, they're going to go next. Next is going to be their weed whackers. Then it's going to be their lawn mowers. They're just going to keep on doing that, and really put a lot of
The
people out
better
of
thing to
business.
do is to not vote for any of these morons that are on the county
And that's,
council.
and again, that's, I didn't
And
want to
go
say
back
that,
and,
but, yeah.
and reverse the, because like, again, I don't think that they have the legal authority to do these things.
Yeah, but if they get enough of them together, I'm sure, you know, I haven't talked to anyone, but I'm sure we talk to them, anyone, they're gonna be very upset about it, because I know those are expensive machineries, and I see a lot of them carrying these big
We
gas
have a
pipes.
back one here.
Those are probably a couple $1,000s, that's a big investment for them. And I've seen people carrying pretty new ones, so I feel really bad. Ehrlich and Company, they're just,
But even if you try to order certain chemicals or something off Amazon, it says we cannot ship to Montgomery County, Maryland.
oh, that's right, certain pesticides, oh, yeah.
Yeah, saying you
Pesticides,
couldn't put
yeah.
that kind of, certain chemicals in
Yep.
grass.
Okay, so, all right, we'll move on.
Your gas stove is coming, people.
Yeah, they're really going after gas stoves. Let's see, this I believe was sustainable consumption and production. The concept of sustainable consumption and production was later recognized in the Johannesburg Plan of Implementation adopted in 2002 at the World Summit on Sustainable Development. That occasion, sustainable consumption and production was identified as one of the three overarching objectives of and essential requirements for sustainable development, together with poverty eradication and the management of natural resources in order to foster economic and social development. It was acknowledged that fundamental changes in the way societies produce and consume, again, you'll eat the bugs, are indispensable for achieving global sustainable development.
But you see that, it says furthermore, the plan calls its chapter 3, changing unsustainable patterns of consumption and production. Okay, so what that basically means is it's unsustainable because only some of us can do it, the rest of you can't.
Yep. Remember the big push for meatless burgers and all the hype? What happened? They're worse for you than regular meat because there's so many additives, so much sugar, so much chemical, so much processing. It's not good for you.
So much salt.
Also, if you didn't know, the Paris Olympics, they complained because they had no meat. Everything was, meatless. The milks were soy milk or oat milk, and they said enough. So like a week or 2 weeks into it, they're like, or a week, they said no. Start bringing in real eggs or real
They
milk.
had no air conditioning either.
Yeah. Kathy.
One of the meetings that I captioned in Los Angeles County, the farmers in a part of the county were absolutely livid, and the politicians didn't want to do much about it. An almond farm bought a bunch of land all around them, and all of a sudden the folks who had wells and everything in that area, their wells dried up, lakes were drying up, streams were drying up. The almond farming consumes a lot of water. And so every time you have almond milk, keep that in mind that, it's destroying a lot of water.
Yeah, like cotton. If you didn't know, cotton requires a hell of a lot of water too for growing cotton. So some places aren't, like California, that valley there is pretty dry. Like she said, they have to ship in a lot of water from the Colorado or from the ground. Again, at some point in history, post-flood, California was a big lake. You've seen the presentation on it was flood. You would see that there. But so there's a lot of aquifers underneath. But like you're saying, it's getting a lot of farming. They grow also rice by the Sacramento area. Rice requires a lot of water. You got to flood that entire area. It's really fun to drive over that because you're high above the freeway. You look down and there's some rice paddies. But requires a lot of water. Okay, this is about Sri Lanka again. They decided to switch to organic farming. With very little turnover. with very little, what do you call it, where you phase it in. It was like literally overnight, and it was a big problem. So it shipped.
There's that word sustainable again.
Sri Lanka's economics in free fall. Runaway inflation reached 54.6% last month, and South Asian countries now headed toward bankruptcy. 9 in 10 Sri Lankan families are skipping meals, and many are standing in line for days in hope of acquiring fuel. The dire situation culminated last week in an uprising in which an estimated 300,000 protests took over President Home in office and set fire to Prime Minister Home, resigned after fleeing the country with probably a lot of millions to his name, leaving as interim president. I'm not going to pronounce his names. Yep. There's no singular cause for the crisis, which has been building for years due to political corruption and right-wing authoritarian politics that weakened democracy. In April 2019, the crisis accelerated after suicide bombings at church hurt the nation's Tourism industry, which weakened its currency, made it more difficult for government to import essential goods. Let's see. At the end of 2019, tax cuts slashed government revenue, while in 2020 the COVID-19 pandemic further decimated the tourism industry with skyrocketing inflation. But let's see. Pandemic aside, that's not the typical set of conditions for the collapse of a developed country like Sri Lanka. But in the spring of 2021, President Rajapaksa made an unusual decision. He banned synthetic fertilizer and pesticide imports practically overnight, forcing Sri Lanka's millions of farmers to go organic. It proved disastrous as a group of Sri Lankan scientists and experts had learned. Do you think he made this decision on his own? Where do you think he got this directive?
The UN.
Yeah, probably the UN. It wasn't his idea.
Although, I'm sure if it happened overnight, they probably paid him an outstanding billions of dollars to do it.
Yeah.
That were unaccountable.
All right, so we get the idea. It was a disaster, and I think like Rabbi is correct. He was probably paid a lot of money to do this. Someone got off rich off of this.
And it wasn't sustainable.
That's right. So we'll skip that.
I don't think their super duper tidal wave helped either with their
that was
tourism.
Was that Sri Lanka? No,
Yeah.
that was Indonesia, or I don't know where that was. Oops, I messed this up. We should have seen 12. What's 12? Ensure. I think this one is sustainable tourism. Yeah, this is sustainable tourism, whatever that means. Tourism is one. Okay. You know what? I think you get the idea here. Just I'll skip this. Yeah, this was possible production. Okay, so I was wrong. Climate action. Okay, this should be fun. All right, so these are your folks that love to tout climate change. So you got Justin Trudeau and Melinda Gates. You got Klaus Schwab, the founder of this organization, the Economic Forum. You got, love Greta Thunberg, you know, but she's no longer the poster child, and she's jealous. How dare you? Okay, you got George Soros. He's a multi-billionaire, pushes progressive ideals. You know, Justin Trudeau becomes Prime Minister of Canada. He gets invited to the World Economic Forum, has a meeting with George Soros, and lo and behold, Trudeau comes back to Canada and partners with one of his progressive foundations for billions of Canadian tax dollars. And you got Hal Gates. All right, let's read this quote from one of the World Economic Forum. We have a single mission to protect and hand on the planet to the next generation. So, at whatever cost. Again, we read this earlier. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So, again, these people have been reading their scripture. Romans 1 states something pretty interesting. When you start worshiping the creation, what does God do to you? The wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and righteous men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. So a painter testifies to a painting, a painting testifies to a painter, a building testifies to a builder, an architect, a creation testifies to a creator, yeah. And the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. Although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give him thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking. Foolish hearts were dark, and claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the mortal God for images resembling man and birds and animals. So basically they replaced the creation worship of the creator with the creation. So what does God do? Gives them up to the lust of their heart, and we get the idea. So let me ask you this question. Has the wrath of God been revealed to the United States? Not the full bit. According to this, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and righteous men. But what does he do? For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions.
That's what's happening right now.
That's
Is that
what's
we
happening.
have dishonorable passions, and when you, I think, in Romans 1, it talks about how men are going after men and women are going after
Yeah, this is
women.
Romans 1 here, yeah.
And all of that, because they failed to see God and they've gone after their own ridiculous things.
Yep, and that's what we see here with these people here that are, with these kind of comments.
Yep.
Again, we saw this. All right, so let's track a little bit of history on this climate. So this is from the 50s. Warmer climate on Earth may be due to more carbon dioxide in the Earth. So again, what are they saying? The general warming of the climate. So we could call that, what, global warming? That's just, you know, a play of words. But this article is from, like, I think 1955 or 54. So they're calling it climate change even back then.
Well,
But
they called it global warming, and when it didn't get warmer and they had different weather patterns, they decided to call it climate change because that encompassed everything.
everything, yep.
Because originally, when I was in school, in elementary school, every scientist, every one of them, said there was going to be a mini freeze, a mini ice age. We were all going to
So
freeze
that must
to
have been
death.
in 1977 for you, Rabbi.
There you go.
Yep. So
Earlier than that, it
So-
was actually back in the 60s.
So you see this here. So yeah, this was written the year this car was made. So this was 55. Exxon knew about climate change almost 40 years ago. The funny thing is that they came up with this name. They weren't really calling it climate change. It was global warming. It was really global warming, but in the article they make it sound like that's been the name going on for ages. Now listen to Leonard Nimoy, 1978.
Never treated clockwork regularity. If we are unprepared for the next advance, the result could be hunger and death on a scale unprecedented in all of history.
Listen to the scaremonger.
What scientists are telling us now is that the threat of an ice age
Ice age.
is not as remote as they once thought. During the lifetime of our grandchildren,
This was 1979.
Arctic cold and perpetual snow could turn most of the inhabitable portions of our planet into a polar desert.
In 1977, the worst winter in a century struck the United States. Arctic cold gripped the Midwest for weeks on end. Great blizzards paralyzed cities of the Northeast. One desperate night in Buffalo, 8 people froze to death in maroon cars. Pat Bushnell was on the road that night.
Traffic just absolutely stopped. I was afraid of being stuck in the car all
All right, due to time, we won't go any further. But again, there was a 2-year period where there were bad snowstorms and cold weather, and because of that, they now are yelling, oh, okay, no more global warming, we got the coming ice age. Let's go 9 years later, and back to 1988, and now what? Global warming has begun, experts tell us. And this is where Al Gore comes on the scene with his books.
Yeah, we're all supposed to be dead according to him right now. So, yay.
And let's see, and what did Ocasio-Cortez say in 2017? And what is it? In 5 years we won't be around. Was it 5 years or 10 years?
Doesn't matter, we're still here.
So yeah. Again, okay, so
And the poor polar bears. I don't know, has anyone ever needed a polar bear? I've never needed a polar bear.
just look at the name. So this is 2012, and they're still calling it global warming. So global warming, but all of a sudden, somewhere with 2015, 2016, they got away from global warming and started using this name, and that's what's stuck since climate change. Yep.
Because it can go either way.
And there we go, global warming. But they've actually been using the term climate change has been used as far back as, and even further back. But again, they decided to stick with climate change, not global warming. In my opinion, global warming sounds more ominous than climate change. But that's just me. If I were to scare people, I'd talk about global warming.
But you can argue that it's not global warming. You can't argue that it's climate change because it's so.
Whole climate, yeah, you're going from spring to summer, summer
Climate
to
changes
fall.
all the time anyway.
Yeah. So, these images of floods, more floods. Floods are due to climate change. All right, help me out, Mishkan. Floods are due to? No, climate change. Come on.
Oh, sorry.
You're not good. You're not good sheep. Floods are due to? Okay.
People losing their houses in the wrong place.
Droughts are due to?
Storms.
Oh, come on, Rabbi. Climate change. Blizzards are due to?
Climate change.
But we had all these things before.
Hey, hold on. Don't steal it. Blizzards are due to?
Dairy Queen.
Yeah, there we go. To a sweet tooth. Yeah. Okay. Almost had you guys. Yeah, look, even Montgomery County has their county action plan. Read this stuff. Look at some of these key words they're using here. The vision, Montgomery County's community members are empowered. How many times have we seen empowered in the World Economic Forum descriptions?
Yeah.
Empower this, empower women, empower children, empower infants. Like we really want to give infants the power to make decisions. Motivated to take action on climate change while striving for equity among, they're using all the buzzwords. Facilitate inclusive. Ugh. Particularly with residents who are black, indigenous, or people of color. Low-income residents, okay, so you get it. Build strategic partnerships among, so this is what's going on in
Montgomery
county. And trust me, it's going on in the schools here. Undertake vigorous public outreach. You see all the buzzwords being used here. Let's see. 2030 agenda calls for the widest possible international cooperation aimed at accelerating the reduction of global greenhouse emissions and addressing adaptation to adverse impacts on climate change. How many remember the scare from the late 80s on the ozone in the Antarctic? Remember the ozone? Ozone is back to where it was. It's just cyclical.
Yeah, because they said it was aerosols.
Yeah, but they only ban aerosols in this country. Around the world, there's
Right, they brought it
again,
back.
it's cyclical.
It's all nonsense.
It's deception. Remember, a Marxist approach appropriate for the climate crisis and the 21st century. Remember how we started out? Challenging Marxism to meet the challenge. So they want to use Marxism to meet the challenge of climate change. So they want to use Marxist ideology, Marxist principles. This is very dangerous. And that's what you see in a lot of the pictures I've shown in the past, these people that are with climate change, they got their little red arm and, what is it, sickle and hammer insignias, and they're wearing red, and anyway, they got the socialist Marxist platform. That's why I started off last week. Green is the new red. That's really what it is. It's a communist socialist agenda.
What does the Z stand for?
Where is
That was in
the star.
a Zionist. Yeah, I think he was Jewish. His name was Mordecai something Levy. Mordecai something Levy was his original name. But anyway. By the way, you should look into Karl Marx. If you ever have a chance, just read about him. Biography, articles written about him. This man was good for nothing. He really was. He didn't work a day in his life, starved his children. Most of them died of hunger. Really wicked man. And he's one of the 7 men that they say that still rules from the grave. Charles Darwin's another one. John Dewey is another one. He's the one that introduced the Western to the public school, the curriculum. Yeah, what is it?
Dewey Decimal
Dewey,
System.
okay, yeah. He did a lot of teaching in this early 20s, late teens, and I think in the former Soviet Union. Again, he was a Marxist, and that's what he brought into the school agenda.
Our climate is heating rapidly. I don't think so.
Okay, yeah. Again, we won't go into this again. We know that the sun has more impact on climate than us. So if there's an active solar storm, or the time where it's cyclical. They track the solar storms, and higher the solar storm, you're going to see a little more heating of the weather. Again, climate action is the 21st century greatest opportunity to drive forward all sustainable development goals. That's why everything is about climate change. Will climate lockdowns be necessary to fight the climate crisis? Well, they would love to. We've seen this. Nothing new. Again, isn't it all about control? Again, we say the Antichrist is referred to as the beast in the book of Revelation. The Antichrist refers to the beast. This beast emerges from the sea, symbolizing chaos, evil, and is given power by the dragon, representing Satan. The beast reign is marked by blasphemy against God, persecution of saints, and the relentless quest for global domination.
Something coming out of the sea means Gentiles.
Gentiles, thank you.
The Antichrist will be a Gentile.
Gentile nations, that's correct. Here's one. Why are they pushing this? 7 reasons why dictators are important. Sometimes dictators do good things.
Sometimes.
What? Do we want another committee? We have too many already. What we want is a man of sufficient stature to hold the allegiance of all the people and to lift us up out of the economic morass into which we are sinking. Send us such a man, and whether he be God or devil, we will receive him. David Spangler. So you can see the world is waiting for this man. Life below the water. We won't go there. Life on land. Again, the scripture says we're supposed to be good stewards of the earth, right? And there's a proverb saying that we should be good to animals that are under our care. We see this in the last chapter, in the last sentence in the book of Jonah. Remember how God says, don't you know I have 120,000 people in this city, also a lot of cattle. I find that interesting that he incorporates the care for the city of Nineveh with 120,000 people that don't know the right from left, but yet he also includes in animals too.
But the animals fasted also, right? Didn't we read
Yeah, that's right. The animals were fasted for 3 days, and they were covered, I believe, in sackcloth as well. Someone can check that for me, but I believe, yeah, they were serious. A wicked, absolutely wicked, evil group of people, the Ninevites, absolutely repented. They actually took this prophet for his word, and they repented. But what happened a couple hundred years later?
They went back.
They went back and they were destroyed. We talked about this with Wes. I saw pictures from Voice of the Martyrs. They were showing a camp there for refugees, a Muslim camp. A lot of them were coming to Christ and saying, "These are the plains where Nineveh used to be." And I'm looking at this going, "This is absolute dead desert chaos." And yet there were 120,000 people. You have to feed them, food. That's a lot. That's like more than the population of Rockville. Food, water, and you look at that now and you go, "Wow, it's the driest, hottest desert of deserts." But it was at one point pretty lush. Promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, all the buzzwords. Provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable, and inclusive. So they use inclusive twice here. Institutions at all levels. By the way, if you didn't know, a lot of companies now that new administration's coming into place are getting rid of their DI departments. Boeing, Walmart. I can guarantee you, as soon as DOGE takes over, the DEI is going to disappear from all government branches. It's going to be the first thing Elon Musk. I suspect that's the first thing Elon Musk is going to get rid of. And you're going to start seeing it disappear corporately as well. Violence against children. Okay, if you've been here in Michigan long enough, we know that we're not going to read this. These people, these elites, are probably the biggest pedophiles, probably the biggest supporters of pedophiles. We've had people here talk about that, as Rabbi was sharing with us. All the big events, the Final Four, the World Cup, the Super Bowl, whenever those are occurring in the cities, big number of children start being smuggled into the cities for all these rich people to abuse. And I think this is just a lot of nonsense, but I suspect a lot of these people, not let's say everyone, but a healthy number of them are probably pedophiles. Maryland parents can't opt kids out of LGBT book curriculum core rules, so they're so concerned about the welfare of kids, yet these books are pornographic books.
Montgomery County did allow people to opt out, but when 90-some% of the parents opted out, they turned around and revoked the opt-out option.
So 90% of the people
And the
don't
books,
count.
the books are still there, but they won't put like true books in there, important things like.
Oh, Mark Twain, Huckleberry Finn.
You can't have the Bible there. You can't have the Bible there, but you can have all the pornography there.
So again, just to let you know, the leaders go to World Economic Forum so they can get orders from the elites like George Soros on what to do. So after this meeting, after this meeting, Trudeau, and this is when he first became Prime Minister in I think 2015-16, met with Trudeau on World Economic Forum, and then he implemented some of his progressive. I don't know. He's got these companies or groups into Canada. So someone made a lot of money off of that. So again, they go get their direction from these folks. How many of you know the Star Wars series, the story from you remember from episode 1, there was this shouting figure behind running things, just like in the end it was Emperor Palpatine. He got Soros and others like him behind the World Economic Forum running things. Again, this guy is a wicked man. Open borders, everything that's anti-God, this man is supporting.
And he's almost 100, or he's 90.
94.
Yeah, well, I suspect, again, I suspect what we saw with Bob Dylan is going on with this man. He must have done some deal with the adversary, and that's what's going on. That's why it says, for what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and forfeit his own soul?
He's already lost his soul.
Again, Montgomery County Schools, Glen Haven here in Silver Spring, Equity and Racial Justice at Glen Haven Elementary School.
They're also teaching pro-Palestinian.
Haven Elementary School.
Yes.
And Islamophobia, they cover that in MC.
Well, and we have a student here who was wearing his Mishkan beanie cap, and they made him take it off. They can't have any Hebrew writing on their clothes when they go to the school. You can have the Arab writing, you just can't have Hebrew writing.
All right, Black Lives Matter at school. Many people are hoodwinked with this. Guess who said the following? We are trained Marxists. We have 1 minute, and we have 6 slides. We're okay. Was it the evil white supremacist Charlie Kirk? Was it the beautiful African queen Patrice McClures?
Yep.
Or was it the Uncle Tom Larry Elder?
No.
Yeah, it was Patrice McClures. And she ended up buying, what, $5 million+ homes in LA with all the money, lifestyles of the socialists. Of course, they made, again, she was used as a tool to promote, chaos in the cities, burning, and, she got paid off. And now she's disappeared.
Well, she's not disappeared, she's still collecting money.
She's still, okay, I think 80 million was their thing. So again, it's Black Lives Matter.
They also bought a $40,000 show dog.
Oh, that's right, that was that Sean King.
Yeah.
All right, promote peaceful and inclusive. Okay, we saw this again, read this. Remember everyone was yelling peace, peace, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction shall come upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape.
Yep.
The Lord saw the evil of man was very great. This was in Genesis 5, and I don't think it's any different now. Signs of the end of the age. This was the great Matthew 24, what is it called? I forgot what it's called. But
the beginning of birth pains.
Pains, there we go, thank you. As he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately saying, tell us when all these things, talking about end times events, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? And Jesus answered him, see that no one leads you astray, for many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ, and they will lead many astray, and you will hear of wars, rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. Again, the famines and earthquakes will be due to climate change. The Lord will induce those. All these are but the beginning of birth pains. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation to put you to death. And you will be hated by what? Some nations. All nations. Does all mean literally mean all or most of them? All, okay. And then many will fall away and betray one another and hate one another, and many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. We have to remember this. I'm always constantly reminding myself of this. Whenever I drive through Bethesda and Friendship Heights, and I look at just all the dead streets and all the stores boarded up, and I remember, wow, 20 years ago, this was bustling. I remember going there and in my pre-Christ days, pre-saved days, going there to the bars and clubs and restaurants with people. It was bustling, and now it's dead. So whenever I look at that, I remember this world is passing away. Our citizenship is not in here. And we're done. Partnership for the goals, we will skip that. We won't go. There's nothing there. So we're 3 minutes over. How can we sum this up, Rabbi, in one word? What can we, as Long Solomon would say, so what?
Don't believe the hype. It's all lies to control you.
Yeah.
Don't give in to the man. Don't give in to these lying pieces of words.
Of lost souls. Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't know what they're talking about, and because of this, this is going back to control. Remember that God's plan says the next form of government will be a one world government, and this is what they're trying to get to. And the only way they can get to this is by controlling all of us. And if they can't control us, they can't get there. So it's going to start off with, like he said, you need to cooperate because it's better for the country, it's better for everybody. So it's going to be a matter of, well, do it because for the good of the people, do it for the good of the world. And then it'll be like, if you don't do it, you'll be in re-education camps. Again, it's going to get ugly, people. It's going to get ugly. And you are going to be the ugliest of them all because of the fact that you believe in God and that we take the Bible seriously and we will not compromise the truth of the Word of God to the left or to the right. So be prepared for the torture. Be prepared for the things that are going to come eventually. Hopefully the rapture will happen and we'll be out of here. But there's going to be a lot of fake Christians that are left behind. And fake Christians who are left behind are going to go through the wrath of God, because the wrath of God is not for the people of God, but is for those who need to be convinced of God's power and authority. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed learning about the 2030 Project. These things sound really good. Oh, let's do this with equity and equality and diversity and blah, blah, blah. But I think we've seen enough of that, even here in Montgomery County, to know it's all crap. It's just a way of taking your tax dollars and enriching themselves and their friends, and nothing's changed. Like I said, I've been voting since the 70s, and nothing's changed. Every election cycle, it's the same crap on the ballot and the same do-nothing politicians doing it. This is why they hate Donald Trump so much, and this is why they hate you so much. So, again, I don't really know what else I can say to get you to understand that this is it's all coming to fruition. You're seeing the Bible come alive. Yes. Don't be afraid. God's got you. Don't worry about this. Yes, Amy?
Don't you think that you're extra hated if you're a Jewish Christian?
Oh, absolutely. The thing that Satan hates the most is Jewish Christians. That literally is the goal. And, the largest number of Jews to come to faith actually happened between World War I and World War II, when Jewish evangelism was at its peak, and they were killed off in the Holocaust. Because it wasn't about your theology, it was about your ethnicity. And Jewish believers who understand the truth that Jesus is the Messiah are the biggest threat to Satan of any other group of people. You guys are right next to us. You're right behind us. So if you go like, who does Satan hate the most? It's the Jewish believer followed by the true Christian. So be prepared. That's all I can tell you. I try to make sure that you guys have an understanding of what's going on in the world. After because you know that our 10th anniversary party for our congregation is January 4th, and then right after that we're going to go through Daniel, Revelation, and End Times prophecies, and we'll probably take the whole year doing it. Should we last that long? If Jesus doesn't rapture us before that, we'll probably spend a year looking at End Times prophecy.
Rabbi, is this teaching Saturday sermons or Tuesday?
Saturdays. So the sermon series will be on Daniel, Revelation. Okay? And every week we'll get another understanding of what's happening in end times. Okay? Yeah, you don't want to miss it because this is good. I mean, if you this Saturday is movie night. We've got the second movie in the was it a trilogy? Left Behind, the Tribulation Force. So we're going to find out what happens now that the man of perdition, the Antichrist, has been revealed, and what he's going to start doing. And I'll give you this. I don't know about the movie so much, but I can tell you that the book series, which is on the library back here, if you wanted to check out the book series, really followed very closely to Scripture. But I remember reading it, and it started before computers actually were a thing, okay? Mm-hmm. And the people they were using computers like in the future, and it could find, if you got on your computer, Satan could find you. And I'm like, how can they find you? Well, you have an IP address. Mm-hmm. But see, these things, I didn't understand back when I was reading that series, and I thought, that's all crap. They're not going to be able to find us. And just the fact that I have my phone in my back pocket, they could find me right now. Mm-hmm. And they could they could literally drown, put a drone over the house and blow us up or something. So Yeah, and the books were pretty accurate as far as futuristic understanding of the internet and those kind of capabilities and stuff. But anyway, so we're going to continue that. So movie night is Saturday night because it's the first Shabbat again. So we're going to continue the movie series Left Behind. I'm going to be preaching on No Hanukkah, No Christmas, and getting us ready to understand Hanukkah and what happened during the time between the Old Testament and the New Testament, the 400 years of God's silence. Okay? Any questions? Comments? Did you guys enjoy these last two things? You got anything, Arnold? You got anything, Paul? Okay. Well, then I'm going to pray, and you guys can eat more food and talk and do what you want to do. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for opening our eyes, letting us not be just sheep, Father, but also knowing, because you said, I've hidden nothing from you, because you're my friend, and so I've told you everything. So the fact that Jesus has shared with us what's going to happen, and the scriptures are full of the future, Father, we're grateful that we are not part of those that are being blindly led by our governments and by the fake media and by those things, but Father, we're being led by the scriptures with a true understanding of what's happening in the world. So Father, I ask you to watch over each of these as they serve you in this world. Father, seal them for the work of the Holy Spirit. Father, let them be the example that others, Father, would understand what's going to happen and how salvation is so important. Let this be the day that we share salvation with everyone we come in contact with and continue to do so throughout the short time we have left here on earth. We praise you, Father, for all that you've done for us in the precious name that made it happen, the name Yeshua. Amen. Sit 1 second.